He is now. Mike, your host.
All right, now I got it. Now I can do it. So, oh, I've got some power now. I'm a host. Okay.
Just a warning, we may have some latecomers, Mike, so if you could keep an eye on admitting people.
I sure will. That's a good point. I will kind of look and if they text anybody, tell me, all right, if they're in the waiting room or something and I can't see them or something, let me know, okay? All right.
Sure.
Well, thank you all for having me here today. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm speaking to some old friends. I was out at the SEC cross country championships, and my feet are still numb and wet and cold and frozen from this morning. But it kind of remind me of the days when Al Tacker would come down to the Rainbow Softball Center and we watched state softball together and all the other activities that we used to have. And so it's good seeing some of you again. And certainly I know most of you. And if I don't, I certainly know who you are. So today I am talking about our park sales tax. It's a quarter-cent sales tax. We have 1/8 that's permanent, 1/8 renewable. I know all you guys know this, but it was all passed back in the year 2000 when Stevens College decided they had financial troubles and they needed to sell the park, the golf course. And so it was Barbara Hoppy helped lead an initiative petition, and she still thinks that's in her ward. And Carl had always kind of remind her that where the ward boundaries were. So we always had that talking, but really that was instrumental. That was, you talk about a grassroots efforts of getting something done by citizens, and that was it. So now after the land was acquired, that park sales tax is now used, the permanent part is to help us with our operation funds. And of course, in 2001, we would put about 500,000 to it. And then of course, over the years, as the economy, and you could really tell the dips in the economy, and like in 2010 and 11, when the economy tanked, well, we either had to cut or we had to do without. And so we ended up adding more money from the park sales tax to proper operations. And then when council priorities would change and we would get more police officers and public safety officials, then more funds from the park sales tax was used to operate our budget, which freed up more money for those other agencies. And so before that, because our money all came from the general fund, and that's really the funding that comes from police, fire, public works, public health department, all that. By us having our own dedicated source of funding, it allows us to continue to grow without impacting the funds available for those other critical agencies in our city. The renewable part was also passed in that same time period, and it was approved in 3 times. We've extended it in 5, 10, and 15. And in 15, it was for 6 years versus 5 years. This tax is scheduled to expire in March of 22. People say, well, why don't you put this on the ballot in April? And well, first of all, you know, the council, we work out a schedule, these ballot issues a year in advance, if not 18 months. And so we really didn't know that there would be nothing else on the ballot issue in November. You know, that's not something we have any control over, but we knew there was nothing going to be on in August. So we thought, well, let's try it in November. And so that's what we did. But if we put this on in April, the tax would have expired, and then we would have to talk about it as a new tax. And so that is something that the Citizens Committee didn't want to do. Council didn't want to do that. And so we ended up keeping it on the November timeframe, even though we realized we were in only a single issue ballot. This tax generates $3 million a year, approximately, and it really is our capital improvements, land acquisition, and kind of those major maintenance items that we need. And this time we're going out for a 10-year ballot issue. A lot of it because of, and I'll go over some of those reasons why here in a minute. You know, we have 3,500 acres, 75 parks, 8 major trails, 13 indoor facilities with recreation, and then 42 buildings like park restrooms, concession stands, maintenance buildings, things like that all over the city. And all these parks are like mini cities within the city. And so we have to take care of our own sewer, our own stormwater management, our own electrical, our own water systems. Everything within the park is under our responsibility, and that includes amenities like playgrounds. So for example, we need to do about 2 to 3 playgrounds a year as they get to be in that 20 to 25 years of age. And so we have to do that. And if we didn't have this funding source for that, instead of replacing them, there would not be any playgrounds. We just have to remove them because we can't have unsafe playgrounds out. Same way with our parking lots. We have 2.2 million square feet of parking lots, 5 miles of roads. And so we have to do our own maintenance of all those facilities as well. And that also includes asphalt amenities like tennis courts. You know, we just don't do them because they need to look good. It's because the play's impacted. You know, the big cracks cause problems, so we need to do it. Restrooms, Colombian standards change. Used to be when I'd go camping as a kid, an outhouse was fine, you know, oops, sorry. But now, you know, we need, Colombians expect better restrooms. So my goal now is to make sure our park restrooms are something that my wife will enjoy going to. And so that's a part. Our utilities, you know, the electricals change, so do our requirements. And we want to provide better lighting for our park users, and that includes conversion of LED, which helps with our sustainability practices. Our shelters need it. We've got a lot of shelters that were made to last forever. However, they do age out, you know, in terms of birds roosting in the shelters and all that. And so we do have things like that we need to do. Probably the biggest thing in our shelters is the electrical demands. It used to be one outlet would handle it. Now we got people saying, I need to plug in 30 crock pots, a hot dog machine, a popcorn machine, 2 bounce houses, and we need to hook up a PA system, you know. And so it's the electrical demands certainly have changed by our users that rent our shelters. The bridges on the MKT trail, they're the original bridges. They're over 100 years old. We've replaced 6. We've got to do a few more, and we've got funds in this next ballot issue to do 3 more. And the good thing about bridges, they're a great federal grant match. So we can match for a grant and then apply for that and maybe take those 3 bridges we have funding for and turn it into 6 more bridges. And we want to be good neighbors. Our neighborhood parks, all the people that live near our parks, our realtors, when I spoke to the realtors, they tell us how they advertise homes near a park. And so the key point, though, is it's a well-maintained park. The reverse happens if it's a park with a playground that's in bad shape, the basketball goals are bent, and it looks bad. Then the reverse happens, your property values go down. Well, we don't want that to happen. So we want to be good neighbors, keep those parks well maintained. And of course, the biggest question we get is, why do we need new parks? And I say, well, tell Columbia to quit growing, right? You know, in 2000, we were at 84,000. Now we're at 124,000. That's a 47% growth. I guarantee you, our park budget and park system hasn't grown 47% in that time period. And so you see those kind of things. But more importantly, the geographical area of Columbia's expanded by 13.4 square miles. And so when these guys come in with new developments or new additions to the city, and they want to park in their neighborhood, you know, that's how we get a lot of our parkland. And we do have a master plan that shows it. We show that when growth happens that we can do it. So sorry about that. I'm keep omitting people. There's people coming in. So so I see that you know, as people come in, you know, we can do it. So and research shows that kids within a half mile of a playground are 5 times likely to be a healthy weight compared to those without. So we want people, if they come into the outskirts of Columbia, to have the same amenities as those of us that's lived in Columbia all our lives. And so, and the good news is, you look at number 3 there, Whitegate. We finally got that Whitegate Park. You know, after years, I think that's been on my Could and Dick Green's and I's list since 1994 when we did our master plan. And we've finally been able to acquire that number 3 in that middle of that image there. And really, we do that because people use the parks. Our citizen survey earlier this year found that 87% of the Columbians responded saying they've used the park at least once in the last year. And that's a huge number. You know, I bragged to the police chief, well, thank goodness, you know, 87% of Columbians don't use the police department. so that's certainly something to look at, but they choose to come out to our parks, whether it's just running on the trails or coming to numerous events. The national average is 78%. And so you can see Columbians use their parks a lot more than what the average is. And of course, the thing we also look at is that sports facility tourism dollars. You know, in the 2020 CVB estimated we lost almost $10 million in sales tax revenue from not being able to host things like the Show Me State games and all that. And so when they come back to Columbia in 21, this past year, it was a big boost to the economy. This was a 19 in Missouri State cross country. That's been in Jeff City for over 40 years. We were able to get it back in Columbia by creating one of the projects with the park sales tax, the Gans Creek cross country course. And then this morning, like I mentioned, we hosted the SEC championship course. And so you look at that, and I'll go back here. Trying to. You can see the weather this morning caused havoc. Our staff's been out. We've got it set up. This is the awards platform on the left. I mean, it's major TV coverage, good publicity for the city of Columbia, and it's certainly something that really helps keep Columbian on the map. We estimate, or the CVB estimated, that the 2020 tournaments in Columbia alone, just in our Parks and Rec facilities, had a local economic impact of 10 million. That's people staying in hotels, eating at restaurants, shopping at the retail stores, buying gasoline. It's that trickle down of money. Plus, one of the things I'm really proud about is we do a lot with our local businesses and contractors. We take that money that citizens entrust with us and turn around and spend it right back with our local shops and businesses. So we did a survey. We looked at all of our sales tax, all the expenses we did in those 5 years, and we did them by zip code. And that's how much we spent back with our local business contractors, who turn around then and hire local people who then invest it and reinvest it back into the community. And again, it's all about that quality of life, that sense of place. And IBM, was one of the factors. The city's quality of life important, and ability for them to attract and retain employees. Our planned hiking and walking and biking trails were something that kept them. And so now that people can live and work anywhere, they don't have to, work in Columbia. They can work in St. Louis and still live in Columbia, and virtually does that. So we really need to do the things that keep us in that high quality level. We do have a park sales tax fact sheet, and that is a big promise to our citizens. This has been vetted by numerous commissions, public input, and finally our city council approved a list of projects that if the citizens extend the tax, these are the ones that we will accomplish if you vote for it. So we always try to keep up with our promise. We've always honored our promise in previous issues. And so it's something we're very proud of. Our categories are 5 categories of land preservation, trails and greenbelt, maintenance improvements, new facility, and some annual funding, and then with some money for contingencies. Our projects are all over the city. Well, we want to make sure every ward is well represented, as well as every area of the city is represented by a project. And so the first one's obviously land acquisition. We have 2.5 million for land acquisition, and that's for neighborhood parks, for trails and green belts, just acquiring land for preservation and protection. It's part of our city's 2021 strategic plan to do that. And so that's something we're important with. The good news about this is we work with a lot of developers, but when they submit their plats and we come to them with our neighborhood parks plan and say, hey, you're going to present this plat of land for development, but we show a need for a neighborhood park, and we usually can talk them into donating that land. So we get a lot of our land provided to us through donation, or a combination of donation or below market sales. And so that's why we're able to do it. And that's part of it. And these are all local pictures of local parks, preservation of natural areas, green space. So we can have a very active park like Stevens Lake Park, but it's still preservation of green space. Phillips Lake Park, all these parks, a lot of green space. Now they'll say, well, you're building athletic fields, but a lot of it's green space. And so when you look at those kind of things, it's better than a bunch of development with parking lots and rooftops and all that. So even though it's an active park, it still is preservation of green space. And of course, we do a lot of protecting the environment. We do a lot of education through our stormwater plans, talk about rain gardens, all of our CARP program with our citizens to help us maintain our streams and pond shorelines. And so we do a lot of that with that. And of course, protecting the wildlife. These are all photos that we've got submitted to us. The best thing to do is get photos is have a photo contest. And then everybody submits the great photos, and then you can pick and choose the photos for your presentations like this. And these were some of our photo contest providers. And then these are photos some of our staff provided. These are the various trail users, so, you've got all the way to the more popular turkey, deer, alligator, snapping turtles, and the least popular maybe the skunk. I don't know, I'd want to run across a skunk on the trail, That red fox was in the back of Cosmo Park, right near one of our soccer fields. We even just recently got a photo of a fox right by Clary Shy by the farmer's market the other day. And so the fox is a way, I guess, to get those rabbits that are eating all the land, all the produce that the farmer's market guys are growing. So trails in Greenbelt, Colombians love their trails. One of the bigger advocacy groups we have here in town, Carl and I can attest to the number of emails they will send us when there's a trail project. And so it's really something important for us to consider. And so we've got several trail projects on there that are really designed for several factors. We have 81% of Colombians use trails. That's their number one. That's one of the biggest ones. The second choice is 61%, and that's nature trails. And so you can see that people love getting out, walking, biking, and hiking on our trail system. And so that's why we need to invest in those amenities for Colombians. And so when you look at the projects we have, one of them is Perch Creek. I don't think I would ever guess when I started that the city of Columbia city limits would be at Perch Creek before I left. And it's certainly there. It's been there now for many years. But we want to connect all the way from Gillespie Bridge Road up to maybe Smith Drive. And then we have a lot of projects on the northeast side of Columbia with a goal there of trying to connect to that. One of the ones we're really happy about is connecting what we call the Northeast Regional Park, which really everybody calls the fairgrounds. But it's more than just the fairgrounds. So we've got to come up with a better name for how we refer to that. But we really want to build a trail from that fairground property underneath Highway 63 and then up to Lang Park and Lang School. And then from there, they could take existing pedways on down to Albert Oakland Park and then connect to the Bear Creek Trail and then go on. So that's really one of our signature trail projects that would really imagine now you can get to that park and then bike all the way up to the fairgrounds or some of those amenities up in that area. The Colt Railroad's a big project for us, coming from downtown there by Columbia College out. Right now, we're showing it as a parallel trail to the railroad. Eventually we'll have to decide whether or not the railroad's going to continue. But right now we're saying it will, and we've got funds to build this trail and a couple bridges along there to get us out to Brown Station Road, which would then connect us through pedways on over to Albert Oakland Park. Our big goal is that 30-mile loop of Columbia. Imagine how cool that will be to have that loop around Columbia with spokes connecting to where people live, work, and go to school and all that. And then you've got that amenity there that you can really talk about the programming aspects of being able to host a 30-mile run or a 30-mile bike ride without ever really having to get on any streets or anything like that. And so with this project, we are showing that we would go from 15 miles to just over 19 miles once we can get those two trail projects done. Of course, most of the money is spent on taking care of what we have, maintenance and improvements to existing parks and facilities, our roads and parking, major maintenance. These are the items that are like too big for operating budget, like resurfacing tennis courts. That's one that we can't afford to do that with our own operating budget. So we'll take that, $40,000 out of this annual $150,000 a year for projects and do it. We make sure that we're not only just ADA compliant, but that we exceed it. We want to set the example for all other businesses and other partners in Columbia to show how you can not only just be the minimum of ADA, but you can certainly exceed it. So, and of course, partnering with the school is important because there's no need for us to have a park near a school. If we can invest in that school's playground, and then when the school agrees to leave it open to the public during non-school hours, that's benefit for the taxpayers. There's no need to double dip. And so we work with the school on projects like that. So I won't go through all these lists of projects, but a lot of them are neighborhood park improvements, a lot of second phase projects, and a couple of the key ones were like redoing some of the shelters in Cosmo Park. Some of those that are, that really don't have a great historical, like, just kind of redoing them, again, upgrading that electrical, redoing the Rainbow Softball Center concession and facilities. That pit there you see is the old batting cage area. a storm went through and actually toppled the fencing and ruined the cages. So we need to redo that. And as well, just even the arc. I can't believe the arc's going to be 20 years old now. And so that little water spray ground area there has got some safety issues, and we need to take that out, redo the surfacing as well, and replace that. So it's being loved to death, which is a good thing to have. And again, some of the major community parks like Albert Oakland, replace those the two older shelters, smaller shelters, do a new playground, do pickleball, tennis court improvements, and again, some improvements to the bathhouse. That's interior, nothing exterior, so nothing on that. And then I mentioned some of our existing sports facility improvements, keeping those up, in addition to Rainbow, Atkins, and Timmy, some improvements there to keep those guys relevant and needed, and keep those tournaments coming in, as well as for our recreational. And I did mention some phase 2 projects. We're just now starting to work out at Battle Park, which is right by Battle Elementary and Battle High School. And so we're working on that. So we'll roll right into phase 2 on that while we're out there finishing up phase 1. And then doing some things at the farmers market area, the Clary Park, which would be maybe some additional parking. We're certainly seeing a need for that, as well as working with some educational signage, and then working on see where the CCUA and the farmers market is with their fundraising efforts on finishing out the wings of that MU Healthcare Pavilion. And of course, tennis court, replace tennis courts 1 through 4 in Bethel. Those have almost 22 years old now. And so they've gone beyond crack filling and repairs. And then in Cosmo, a lot of things now. We don't just deal with team sports. And that's something that's really become more evident, especially during COVID, is our individual sports like the cyclocross, the pump track, the biking, those kind of amenities that need to be done. So we're looking at how we can work with those clubs and improve their areas, maybe making like a park. We have a skate park there that bikes aren't allowed. So we want to create maybe a bike park for a different type of user. And I mentioned already the shelters, getting those done, replacing those. And then one of the biggest thing is adding 4 more courts. That winter tourism is something big for Columbia. There's not a whole lot going on with our outdoor natural surface fields in the wintertime. But with this indoor basketball facility, we have that ability to really bring in big tournaments. And if we can add 4 more courts on that, that will be a real big bonus to that. Improving Douglas Park, expanding the skate park, doing some renovations inside the pool, bathhouse, and the shelter there. And one thing with the Memorial Gardens, and you guys all remember when that was done, the artist was from Arizona. She made a memorial that would last forever in Arizona, but unfortunately in Missouri, it's got a little different weather. And so it's got some problems. And so we've been working with our cultural arts department, as well as with our city manager's office, that we'll put in some funding for that, and then just see about a community project on just rethink this whole memorial there, and maybe come back and maybe make something bigger. We're no longer the largest MLK memorial in the country, which we were at one time. And so maybe we need to look at how we can reclaim that title with something else. Rock Quarry again, another kind of a community park, not a neighborhood park, so to speak, but redo the tennis court, playground improvements, parking lot improvements. Magnolia Falls is a new neighborhood park. And we kind of ran out of money with the first phase, but we need to redo this bridge, make it ADA accessible. And so that's something that we'd like to get done as part of this project. And of course, Stevens Lake Park, the amphitheaters is with our monthly art symphony series and our concert series there. It's time to redo that. The playgrounds, re-looking at some of those, redoing them, as well as our spray ground. Again, it's hard to imagine that these parks that I think, Carl, we're all on council. We're all doing this back then. Now they're aging out. So we're cycling through them again. So we've been around a long time when we started seeing projects we did need to be replaced. Twin Lakes, that's something that we need to look at, how our users want to use it. We've got the dog park nearby. What can we do to make that really a destination site for parents with kids and parents with dogs. And so how we can work on all that. And of course, new facility development is an important part of our park sales tax. We have 5.3 million set aside for that. And again, I mentioned Whitegate. We acquired Whitegate with the 2015 money, and now we want to develop it with the 2021 money. And so you see that, and same way with our other neighborhood parks like Creek Ridge, Silver Mill. I like the Creek Ridge example because that's one where he donated half and we bought half at a below market rate, I might add. And same way with Silver Mill, they donated a large piece and we bought a couple smaller lots to expand it. And so again, it's a way we can work with the developers ahead of time, get the park in before all the development's finished. Gates Nature Area, there's a 65-acre near Cascades Park, right off Route K there. We want to put in a little small neighborhood park amenities, as well as some nature trails and hiking trails throughout that tract of land. And probably the biggest one is redoing that. What can we do with the fairground property? The fair had a successful year this past summer. They had record revenues, believe it or not, record attendance, and they had no demo derby. They had no horse shows. It was just basically what's traditionally in the fair and, all the carnival and all that stuff. So they did such a great job. We're really looking forward to that. They've been great partners of ours. And so we would love to start off with 4 synthetic fields. What we're finding now is when a recreational tournament comes and you rinse our soccer fields for a tournament, we find that if it's like the threat of rain, they move to Booneville because Booneville has 5 synthetic turf fields. And so they know they could play. And so if we could get 4 as part of this project, then we can start the games here in Columbia. And then as the fields dry out, move them back to our natural grass fields. Plus, then that provides us that more, we got about 12 months of year for programming on a synthetic turf field versus what you can only do with a natural grass field. Sinclair Park, that's one where we're working with the school district. We bought some land there. That was a development agreement with the school. Basically, we agreed to buy the land so that they can have some funding to build a sidewalk. And so that works out. But we'll probably likely be able to develop and work with the school district on developing a park playground that's both for the middle school as well as for the future elementary school that's going to go just to the north of that middle school. We have funds set aside for a downtown park improvement project. Now, we know we're looking at the Ameren UE site. And if that site becomes acquired by the city, then we have funds to develop that site. Or if that's not possible, then we can look at how we can reinvest that in some of the downtown parks like Flat Branch or some of the other ones around that area. And of course, we have to have some annual funding for equipment. So when you build a cross-country course or you build these other facilities, you need to keep up with equipment to maintain them. And so we have to have that. And so we have funds set aside for that. And really, the most important part is no family is turned away from any of our parks or programs based on their ability to pay. So we have a scholarship program of $50,000 a year, where if you need to have an ARC membership or enroll a kid in swim lessons, you just got to basically fill out a simple form. And that form really asks, if you're a City of Columbia resident, then you can do it. So it's really pretty simple. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate in our programs, regardless of their ability to pay. Because this is a 10-year tax, and because of Wayfair, what we don't know what's going to happen with Wayfair. So we don't know what's going on, because if Wayfair passes, that $3 million a year could turn into $3.25 million a year or $3.5 million a year. And so what we said, we will come back to council in 5 years and just see how the funding's going. And then we'll come back to council with a list of these priority 2 projects that council reviewed and approved as well, and just maybe pull some of these off. And it could be just as simple as putting more money toward land acquisition, which I know is what our Parks and Rec Commission wanted, as well as I know some members of our council wanted to see done too. So it could be as simple as that. So we do have a plan for if we do have more money than what is generated by that sales tax. Again, all this information, including our fact sheets, are on the city's website. It's all facts. There's nothing about promotion or anything like that. That's what we can do. So we can provide you the facts. And so information's on there as well about this issue, as well as historical information about from 2000, 2005, 10, 15. You can see all the projects, the status of the projects, especially the 15 ones. You can see that we've completed them or they're significantly underway. And finally, in closing up, I got 5 key points. It's a renewal, it's an extension, it's not a new tax. Most of the funds is spent on maintaining what we have. New developments are designed to recover some operating costs or stimulate the economy, like through sports tourism. It's the only city funding available for land preservation. I used to joke with Dave Nichols, our public works director before he retired, is that, yeah, when we buy land, people are excited and happy. When you buy land, people are scared because they don't know what you're going to build next to them. So, and finally, really it provides parks and programs for those underserved neighborhoods in Columbia, like the Whitegate area that we just finally were able to acquire. So, whew, I went pretty fast on that, and I hope I didn't go too fast. And I guess now I'll open it up for any questions or comments from everyone. So,
Mike, I have a quick question. One thing I was able to jot down a note about was on the bit where you listed the percentage of things that people use. I think the biggest one was walking, hiking, biking trails, and then the second one was nature trails. Can you explain the difference? Are we not allowed to walk on nature trails?
well, I think the way we took it is runners consider themselves walkers sometimes, and so when we look at like our destination trails, like the MKT trail is a multi-purpose trail. You can bike on it, you can run on it, you can walk on it. Certainly those are great. However, some of our nature trails are single path, where you and I are walking. We can't even walk side by side on some of our nature trails. One of us is in the lead, one of us is following. Some of them we don't even allow bikes on, so it does separate it that way. So, and they're generally not, they're earth surface. They may not even be maintained. They're just, they're not in some areas we may put some gravel down where there's some washouts, but primarily they're just a path. Okay. Oh, you guys go ahead. Go ahead. Sue, how are
Yes.
you?
Good. How are you?
Fine.
I, like many, are very concerned about Rockbridge State Park. And I know that the land north of that's being considered for Canton Estates is still part of the county, as I understand it, rather than the city. But are there plans, do you have things in the works at all, or have been trying to plan ahead to acquire some more natural areas near the state park? And the reason I say that, I don't think we will have a real natural park there 100 years from now if we don't protect it, have a, more of a protection around it.
Yeah, we worked with them real close when we knew that the Crane family was selling the property, which is right on Gans Creek, when that was being done. And so that was part of that back then when I was a park services manager working with their superintendent, Jim Gass at the time, about how we can make sure we are, that if we can acquire that, we could be a partner with them, And so we said, well, if we did everything, we did our development really above the creek line, and they were fine with that. And so we do work with them on that issue as well. And so, and Carl could probably remember some of that stuff back then as well. And I'll let him finish up on that comment. But yeah, I think, protection and preservation are important, for that. And you're right, we definitely do not want to be the agency that eliminated the pink planaria. That's the only one in the world is right there at Rockbridge State Park. And so we're very cautious and careful. And really the Gans Creek Cross Country Course has been a great partner for that, because instead of being baseball fields and softball fields, it's really just a natural mode area. And so it doesn't have any of that stormwater concerns like we would have had if we'd have been back in athletics there. So it really turned out to be a great change of plans from our side to go from sports to this cross country. All right, Carl, I'll let you finish up then.
Yeah, to take the heat off of Mike a bit, it has come before the council that there is a group, kind of an ad hoc committee to deal with some of the issues surrounding some of the recent proposals regarding development of that area. And we've kind of tacitly agreed to establish a group that will look at planning in this particular area. I agreed, and as has Betsy Peters, to serve as council liaisons to this group in terms of taking a look at some of the quote sub-area planning of this area that includes the park and so on with respect to development pressure. So that's coming. It's in the future, and it's not really the responsibility of Parks and Rec, although we interact all the time. But just transition to my comment, and Mike has done yeoman's work with respect to the Parks and Rec department. I often comment, and it's almost obligatory, that when these things come before the city council, that it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have a dedicated sales tax that's independent of the general fund, that's dependent upon public safety and all the rest of it, and even the the meager stuff that we deal with in the city council for our needs. But I guess, and I certainly want to provide some kudos, not only with regards to his comments about Stevens Park, which incidentally is the jewel of the third ward. Barbara Hoppy notwithstanding, who I served with for a long time, and I always give her deference to this and her initiatives, but it really is a third ward park after all. So, and his mention that the Whitegate area is critical, and it is. I mean, that's a big deal for the northeast side in terms of parks. If you look at the northeast side, we're getting to be in pretty good shape with the world's first under the interstate highway trail and lots of other things that connect this whole thing around the city. But the question I have, finally getting to the question, has to do with indoor pools, right? And we obviously are making some improvements to the ARC, which are long needed. But there is always this bit of controversy with Hickman Pool, and where we are with that, and how the parks sees this, and whether there are some other resources. What do you think about that? Where is that discussion going in terms of some of the indoor facilities for swimming, in addition to maybe basketball and some of the others?
Right, that's one that's a hot topic. In 19, we had a swimming pool summit where we gathered all representatives from the high schools, the local colleges, even in Mizzou was there. They had reps. Our local swim team clubs were all showed up, and we talked about what we see as a future for swimming in Columbia in terms of both recreational and competitive swimming. And we were all excited. We narrowed down to a committee where we were all going to go get in a van and drive around and look at all these other pools in St. Louis and St. Peter's and Kansas City and see what's going on. And then COVID hit. And so we just lost momentum. The people kind of petered out and cycled out. And so really we need to revisit that. So I think the ultimate choice is going to be down the road is some private public partnership with at least us, the school district, possibly a swim club, as well as maybe a private person too, to help develop a facility that can be utilized for multiple events. Whether that's on school ground or somewhere else, but really looking at that would be something, because we all know Hickman cannot continue. And even Mizzou they love their natatorium, but they have no spectator areas hardly. So hosting any major meets at Mizzou is problematic because they can't have the spectators. And so, that's just going to be, they can have maybe 1,000 up to 1,000 or so. But like in St. Peter's, they can have several thousand people watching it there. And so anytime there's a U.S. Olympic trial or any kind of a AAU meet or anything like that, it's always goes to St. Louis. And so we're missing out. So how can we do something that will satisfy our local recreational learn to swim lessons, our diving program, because we have to have deep water for that, as well as our high school and swim clubs and swim teams. That facility could be a partnership by many people together. And I think then we'll end up with a tax that may be just for that facility that does it. Or if Wayfair passes, maybe that extra funding is set aside in an account for 5 years or so. And then we have our match, and then the school comes up with a match, and then somebody else comes up with a match, and now we're ready. So how's that for a no answer for an answer?
That's very discriminating. I appreciate that answer, actually.
What a great bureaucrat.
Thanks, Mike. I'm too interested in a better indoor pool environment, but I think Herb's had his, or Sue, their hand up for a while now.
Yeah.
I didn't want to let this go to the last minute, but my comment before we began that the parks in the city are one of the high features of Columbia. And we appreciate what you personally have done, but I would hope that from this meeting, you could take back to the entire staff, because it is the entire staff from top to bottom that makes the Columbia Parks the special feature that they are. And I personally am appreciative, and I think everybody in this room is. Thank you all.
I am the first to tell you that. I tell you what, I couldn't do what I do without the great staff we have. Whether it's Gabe Huffington and as our assistant director, Eric Kaufman, our rec services manager, all the way down to the guys that clean the shelters and the bathrooms every day, 7 days a week. Because if they don't do their job, you guys aren't going to support us in the future. And so it's critical that they know that. And we do a lot of teamwork, team building exercises. We tell them, I constantly tell them how they are really more important to our organization than me. I tell you, because if I don't do my job, then Carl's upset. But if they don't do their job, all of Columbia is upset. So if that bathroom's dirty, everybody's mad. So yeah, I certainly deflect all that praise, goes straight to all the staff for sure.
Thanks, Mike. I think Kathy and then Dee Doken.
I want to ask how you have determined that more than 80% of households use parks and recreation facilities.
We hired ETC, which does the citizen surveys, and they sent out a survey in January and February of this year. And they surveyed, their goal was 500 people to get a 4% plus or minus error margin. And they ended up with 547 responses. And so it was that survey results where they asked them to check, did you use a park? Yes or no? And then we asked them further details, where, and then we asked what trails. We got into some specifics. All that survey information is on our website as well. We shared it with council in a report. Probably early summer with them, but all the details, everything on it, it's really good reading, it's got a lot of comments, what do you think about when you hear about our park system and all that. So it's got a lot of stuff. So we all looked at it, we reviewed it as staff, we all met and talked about some of the, we know we've got some warts. We know there's some things we can do, and that's really part of getting better, is recognizing when people say, if I use a shelter or if I use a restroom late in the day, it's dirty. Well, we know that because we clean it early in the morning. And so it could be used a lot by that day. And so we need to recognize that and figure out ways we can do things better to alleviate those complaints.
Thank you. Then the other question is, please give some examples of nature trails.
Well, let's see. We've got several in like Capon Park. You've got the Hinkson Creek Trail that runs through Capon. But then off of that, we've got a lot of mowed paths in a lot of areas, grindstone nature areas, same way. You've got the big trail there, but you've got a lot of mowed paths off that. And then you've got, oh gosh, the park off of Cliff, or not Cliff, gosh, I'm drawing a blank there.
Bonnie View.
Yeah, Bonnie View Nature Area, got a lot of mowed paths, a lot of nature areas there. Yeah, there's several like that, Kathy, that I'm sorry, I can certainly let you guys know more details, but yeah, we've got quite a few on there.
Thank you.
Clyde Wilson too.
Clyde Wilson, that's one I couldn't think of the name because we renamed it for Clyde.
Cosmo.
Yes, in the back of Cosmo, got the nature area back there that Dee keeps an eye on.
Me and my dog.
Thank you.
I think it's Dee's turn now.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for all the work you're doing to shepherd this through the process to the election. And I think you mentioned a citizen committee. Is that different than the Parks and Rec Commission? Was there a committee that advised on the sales tax?
No, not really. I met the Parks Rec Commission, and then we met with several citizen groups. For example, we would have like a night where all sports groups could show up. Anybody interested in sports, whether you're a part of Diamond Council, soccer club, or if you were just an adult slow pitch softball player and want to tell us what you thought about that. So we had those kind of citizen committee meetings. So it was kind of open to everybody. So.
Does the member of the media who's still on want to ask a question, possibly? Allie?
I'm actually good. Thank you so much, though.
Okay, thank you for being here. Okay, Carl's got another question.
It's not a question, but just a clarification for Dee, who was talking about, where the purview of Parks and Rec. I don't know if you heard that, Dee, but there is another ad hoc committee that the council is considering that both Betsy Peters and I are willing to serve on, to take a look at some of the issues surrounding the Rockbridge State Park area and development pressure in that area. So that's a separate group. That has nothing to do with the ones that we were talking about with respect to this parks sales tax issue.
Yes, Carl, I'm very aware of that. And I thought maybe that had gone by the wayside because of the city county meeting coming up November 15th. It seemed like
not as far as I know. There is no wayside on this, but
that's great.
Looks like Allie does have a question.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just wondering if there was any appeal that you could make to maybe college age students. I know you had mentioned stuff about the lack of ability for Mizzou's facility to kind of accomplish some of the things that these parks would accomplish, but is there anything else that you would want to say?
In regards to addressing college students? Well, we had several of them come to a lot of our meetings, by the way. Some of them live in apartments near trails and stuff like that. In fact, I think almost all of them came to our Grindstone and Cape and Park meetings there when we had it at Water Moss, because it was all from those apartment complexes that were just where the old Sky High is. I can't remember the name of the apartment complexes, but those were it. And we have a lot of them. A lot of our recreational league players are college students. We have a lot of those guys that play in our sports leagues, especially the leagues that where Mizzou doesn't offer, any intramural sports. We have a lot of user groups that are rec club, like Ultimate Frisbee, those guys. We work with them closely on how we can have open spaces for them. And for example, the Gans Creek recreation area, those athletic fields were laid out to accommodate Ultimate Frisbee because those guys told us that, well, Cosmo's great, but because our fields are crowned and individual, like a field here, a field there, we end up building the ones in Gans as one big tabletop with 4 fields laid out. And so now you have this huge square feet area that you can play any size sport on regardless.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mike, I have a brief question or maybe a plug. A lot of my friends are playing pickleball and I noticed it on one of your sheets. And one of the things I heard a whole broadcast on pickleball, they're converting some of tennis courts to pickleball courts. Just a lot of interest in it. I hope after I do my ankle surgery, I can try it. So I thought maybe you could comment on what the plans are.
Carl and I are like that with the pickleball community.
Okay, voice their interest. Okay.
Yeah, but no,
We are
working
like
on it.
inseparable twins.
No,
We are
we,
kind of like inseparable twins on this issue.
yes, they are. We certainly, they are gangbusters. It's the fastest growing sport. Really, it's really taken off for Show Me State games. You know, they don't have that national body yet, like USTA. And so when people say, why don't you convert Cosmo and Bethel and some of those to pickleball courts? Well, we got grants from USTA to redo those courts. And the USTA does not like to have pickleball courts on their tennis courts. And we don't want to repay their grants. So we're keeping those separate, okay?
Good
But
point.
other areas where we can do it, and I think the best thing is for us to do is expand both. We need to have tennis courts. So we're going to build 2 tennis courts in Albert Oakland dedicated just to tennis. And then we're going to expand the pickleball courts there as well. So we can accommodate both. But you're right. We are definitely moving forward with that and can't wait for pickleball to come up with their own grant program. And so they can tell other people they can't have anything but pickleball courts. So
That's great. Thanks, Mike. I'll report back to my pickleball enthusiasts. Any other questions? Mari, Carl, you still have your hand up. Is there a question there?
I know, I can't pass on this pickleball thing. I mean, you know, it's true that Mike and I are kind of like inseparable twins on this whole thing. And this all started at Albert Oakland when there was an attempt at a coup to take over the tennis courts from the 6 pickleball courts that were already established. And I shocked everybody on the city council by voting to suggest that they convert all the rest of the tennis courts to pickleball courts if we get the dedicated tennis courts separate from the pickleball courts on the east side of Oakland. That's what the plan is. And I must admit that I even went on vacation to visit my granddaughter, and we stayed in a place that out back, instead of tennis courts, had pickleball courts. So I just can't get away from this, but I admit that there is a need, certainly in the pickleball world, for more pickleball courts, as long as they don't relegate us to the realm of dinosaurs and still provide for tennis courts. So that's kind of my deal here. So.
And if
Great.
I can interject on a